I was an SS Obersturmführer in World War II. I was one of the few left behind in Berlin during the fighting in Russia. Around the time of the Battle of Stalingrad, something happened in Berlin that the George Floyd deniers leave out of the history books. I'm here to bring it to the public eye. In 1943, I was assigned to the Führer's personal guard section. My responsibilities consisted of doing security details around the administration grounds in Berlin, including standing guard at the door of the Reichschancellery and later the Führerbunker. One day in September of 1942, the SS battalion I was in that made up Hitler's personal guard along with 3 other battalions vacated the city, leaving less than 1/8 of the personnel on garrison around Berlin. We did intense training like the based racist chads we were, starting with a 10-mile hike which we completed in 2 hours, then doing rifle range training. As we came back to the guards' barracks, we noticed white powder all over everything. The powder burned as the trucks that were carrying us to barracks drove over it. When it burned, it smelled like melting tires. That's weird, my comrade, Oswald Mosley said. That wasn't here earlier, was it? No, I replied. I don't think it was. At that moment, our truck came to a halt and our sergeant ordered everyone off the trucks. We lined up on both sides of the truck in single file, waiting for further orders. My hopes of getting a shower and a meal were dashed when I saw that there was no guard standing post at the door of the Chancellery. Something is off here, the sergeant said. I want Lieutenants Kleist, Bachmann and Kruger to set up cover for Lieutenant Choronov's men while they breach the door. Then Kleist and Bachmann's men need to move around to the rear while Kruger keeps the front secure. Lieutenant Choronov was a veteran from Russia who had combat experience resisting the communist revolution as part of the White Army. He had come to Germany after World War I to help fight communists here too. After Hitler became Chancellor, Choronov was given automatic lieutenant status in the Waffen-SS. I was one of the men under his command. As we moved closer to the door of the Reichschancellery, we could smell fried chicken, grape Kool-Aid, and a strange skunk-like smell emanating from the building. We could also hear what sounded like really fast, unintelligible talking over what sounded like an African drum beat. What the hell is that? Choronov asked. I thought there weren't any niggers in Germany. We breached the door and the skunky smell became 10 times stronger. We were met with a cloud of smoke which I thought was the source of the smell. The lieutenant, thinking the building was on fire, began to run towards the Führer's office. We followed him, bursting into the office, to see a man at the Führer's desk. He was dressed in Hitler's uniform and cape, but he was much taller and wider. He also had the blackest skin I had ever seen. He was holding a banana and a brown cigar. The cigar looked like it had been homemade and was clearly an American nigger drug called marijuana. I noticed then that my head felt strange and I couldn't seem to focus on anything. My thoughts flew by like electricity and I began to feel discomfort in my stomach and at the base of my skull. Oh God, I thought, I'm getting high on a nigger drug. I turned through the door and ran, ignoring the sergeant's yelling. I ran all the way to barracks and hid in the shower room. That must have been my imagination, I thought. I walked out of the shower room into the barracks hours later to find my company all in a deep sleep. I walked to my bed with a massive headache and went to sleep fairly quickly. When I awoke the next morning, I couldn't remember any of the events of the day before. I asked my comrades what had happened and no one else could recall either. The battalion sergeant walked into barracks, making sure we were up and making an announcement. The Führer's office will be off limits for the next few weeks. He is taking command of operations in the Soviet Union and needs to focus on that task alone. Affirmative, sir, the company called out. We went about the day like normal, following the patrol schedule all day until supper time. We all went to the mess hall in shifts like normal, except that the only food on the food line were sandwiches with sliced bananas and mayonnaise in the middle. I asked one of the women serving the food if there was anything else available, to which she replied, "There is a direct order from the Führer to only serve banana and mayonnaise sandwiches." What the fuck? I said, banana and mayonnaise sandwiches is a distinctly nigger food group. I don't know anything about it. The woman said. Whatever, I said, walking out of the mess hall without the nigger food. I heard later that there were men in the base medbay from eating the sandwiches. They had turned a poop brown color and had grown massive lips and huge noses. I tried to visit my comrades, but when I arrived at the medbay the doctor would not allow me to enter the bed chamber. I eventually forced my way past him, walking into the room to see that all of the men had turned into niggers and were tied to the bed. All of them were wearing black tank tops and blue jeans and were in a fit of rage in which they screamed strange phrases such as "I can't breathe" when there was nothing obstructing their throats, or "I ain't dat type of guy man," I ain't dat type of guy, and our young generation clearly lost main clearly lost. I walked out of the room, passing the doctor as I left. See what I mean? The doctor said, it's unsafe even to be in the same room with men that are afflicted with such an ailment. I kept walking, scratching my head at the scene I had just witnessed. There were 5 men, all tied up to beds, but I had not been able to discern any of them from the other. They all had large jaws that jutted from their faces like those of a gorilla, with protruding canine teeth. All of them had the same distinct eye shape, and they had all grown to the same exact height. Something was happening, but I didn't quite know what. That's when it hit me. Almost 2 years ago, in 1940, some SS scientists and researchers had figured out how to send people to different places in time. They had, however, supposedly shut the project down after 15 men had died in the year 2020. They'd been sent to the year 2020 to ascertain whether or not the German Reich would last. However, they had not been properly prepared for the unforeseen possibility that they had failed, nor had they known that the time travel machine would send them to Minneapolis, Minnesota. A nigger had killed all of them, and a police officer from 2020 had knelt on the nigger's neck, allegedly killing him. I ran to my car and drove to the research facility that had taken men to a different year. I knew that the research facility had been required to keep extensive records of activity, especially when it came to niggers. These were unfortunately destroyed later when the Zog army stormed Berlin, burning the research center along with records, the time machine, and many other valuable projects to the ground. When I arrived at the research center, I ran to the front desk and hurriedly asked the receptionist where to find research records. I was pointed down a long hallway to another desk. I ran to that one as well, asking the man behind it for the records filed under the name 2020 Time Travel Incident. He brought back only a small file. Inside the file there were pages on each individual who had participated in the project and the brave men who had volunteered to be sent forward in time. There was a file on the nigger who had killed the men, but it had been fully redacted in the past week. That's weird, I said. Why is this redacted? Direct order from the Führer yesterday. The man said, I thought it was strange too, but what can you do? I flipped through the volunteer pages again and saw that there was one survivor, a man named Ronnie McNutt. I asked the man behind the counter for his file, giving back the file on the 2020 incident, and turned through the file the man gave me. Apparently the Führer hadn't found this file yet, because his address was at the bottom. I left the research building, driving directly to Ronnie McNutt's house and knocking on his door. When there was no reply, I pounded. Again, no answer. I kicked in the door, knowing that the imposter posing as Hitler was going after people and documents that could prove his real identity, but that wasn't the case here at all. As I walked in, I heard a man talking from the living room. I heard him say, "So that's how you're gonna be?" and heard a phone click. Then I heard, "Hey guys, I guess that's it," and a gunshot went off in the living room. I ran in to see Ronnie at his desk with a strange device which looked futuristic and seemed to be recording him in color. My amazement was almost immediately cut short because Ronnie's head looked like a jelly sandwich someone had put a firecracker in and lit on fire. He had shot himself in the head. I called the police and left the apartment, knowing that there was only one thing I could do now. The nigger who had replaced the Führer could not be allowed to operate any longer. As I walked into base, my whole company looked at me worriedly. "What's wrong?" I asked. The Führer issued a no-retreat order for the 6th Army in Stalingrad. Mosley replied, "They are being surrounded by upwards of 1 million Red Army troops." I sprinted out of the barracks and into the chancellery down the street. The inside of the chancellery looked like a pack of wild animals lived inside of it. There was spray paint all over the walls and the carpets were stained purple from grape cool ade. I ran up the stairs to the Führer's office, breaching the door and storming inside. There was the imposter Führer, smoking another brown cigar. He looked at me and yelled, "I thought I told y'all racist ass crackies to be staying out my office and shite." "I know you're an imposter," I yelled, pointing my pistol at him. He man. "Ain't shite you can do about it is dare," he said. I pulled the trigger of my pistol twice, striking the nigger in the face and chest. "Ah shite man, I can't breathe. Big Floyd be dying and shite," he said. "Holy shit," said a voice behind me, "that's George Floyd." I turned to see Oswald Mosley standing in the doorway with his STG-44 at low ready. "Who?" I asked. He was a criminal nigger from 2020. He must have stolen the time travel technology when the expedition happened in 1940. He man. You best exactly right, Floyd laughed. The only way to kill him is to shoot him with an IQ test or to force him to overdose on fentanyl, Mosley said, but the amount of fentanyl that would take would poison the air for miles. Good thing I have IQ tests then, said another voice from outside the room. Werner von Braun walked into the room, packing an IQ test into the shotgun he was holding. Floyd got up, running at him, but he wasn't fast enough. Werner shot him with the IQ test, knocking him over. Werner then knelt on his neck. "Go guys, get outside," he said. Mosley and I ran outside of the building, warning the rest of our company, who had appeared outside. All of a sudden the building exploded. Pieces of brown skin and white powder went everywhere, coating everything and everyone. Unfortunately, the war could not be salvaged and the Führer remained missing for the remainder of the time that the German Reich existed. I am currently writing this from an Allied prison camp, where I am doing my best to hide my identity from my captors. If I am revealed, I will probably pull a McNutt and save myself the humiliation of being hanged after an unfair trial. Never trust public figures. Even the best ones can be easily usurped by George Floyd. Keep your eyes peeled.